What's up everyone, Brad here, and if you've already ran through my previous miniDSP videos and need a refresher or a condensed version that just goes over the steps, then this video is for you. Let's get to it. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing as I post home theater and gaming related content every week, and don't forget to click that bell icon so you never miss out on a new video. Also, check out my affiliate links in the description, which help support the channel at no cost to you when you use them. So I've gotten a few comments asking for a video that just goes over the steps of calibrating, time aligning, EQing, and selecting the best crossovers for your sub in your room using the miniDSP and REW. Now, this condensed version won't go over hooking up and installing the miniDSP or the equipment needed to perform these steps. I did cover that in the first part of my miniDSP video series and was already as short as possible as it is, so if you need a refresher on that stuff, feel free to check out the 7-minute video in the card above. Now this condensed version will get you moving along pretty quickly and will keep explanations to a bare minimum. If this is your first time using the miniDSP and doing all this fun EQ stuff, then I'd highly suggest watching my miniDSP tutorial series, starting with that first video, which I'll link to that playlist in the card above. Those videos are much more in-depth and have explanations as to why you're making the adjustments you're making and why you're doing it. This video will be kind of hard to follow if you're new to the world of miniDSP and REW, so I do feel it's best to watch those videos first. Now I've really tried to whittle this down and keep it as short as possible so it can be used as a quick reference guide of sorts. I know it's still a bit lengthy at just shy of 30 minutes, but this is condensed down from an hour and 10 minutes worth of tutorials that I've done and includes everything you need to do short of installing and configuring the miniDSP and REW. So enough of me talking, let's dive in and get started by making sure the receiver is configured properly. So I'm gonna go here into audio, I'm gonna go down to Audyssey, and then I'm just gonna turn off multi-EQ XT, and then I'm gonna back out again. I'm gonna come down to speakers and we wanna change a few things here. Most notably, we wanna change the crossover setting to the max for the front channel. We're gonna back out. We're also gonna go down to bass. We want this set to LFE. You'll notice there's LFE plus main. And then finally, we wanna come into levels and make sure that our trim level for our subwoofer down on the bottom is set to 0. And lastly, we wanna make sure that any type of upmixing is disabled. We just want a straight stereo signal here. We also wanna make sure our subs are set up properly for use with the miniDSP. So for that, we don't want any phase or polarity adjustments on the sub. All right, so we have REW open here. I'm gonna go ahead and click on preferences. For this, we're gonna wanna use Java. For the output device, we wanna make sure that the Denon is selected and that for our input device, we are using the UMIC 1. And also for the UMIC, we want to go over to the cal files and make sure we have the 90-degree file loaded up here. And now to level match, I'm going to hit generator and speaker cal, what's what we want right now. You'll notice I have the front left selected for the master volume output. Make sure that noise is selected on the top bar and that pink random is selected just underneath that. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on SPL meter. And you also want to make sure that you have your miniDSP window up as well. We're going to be on the outputs tab. So what we need to do is we also need to get the overall volume set up on our receiver. I'm going to go ahead and make sure this is set to speaker cal. I'm going to hit play. You're going to hear test tone. And then I'm going to make sure that that reads 75 dB on the SPL meter. And I use the overall volume control on the remote, not the individual trim levels inside the receiver. So now to calibrate the subs, I've already calibrated the level of the front left sub with the front left off camera. So I'm gonna hit play here. All right, and as you can see, you might hear it a little bit in the background, but we're hovering around that 76, 77, 78. So basically, in order to measure the other subs, we're just gonna mute this one, and we'll go to the one on the front right there. We'll unmute it, and we'll play that same tone, except this time, I'm not gonna use the app to adjust the volume. I'm gonna use this little dial here. Okay, so as you see, I've reached minus 2.2 on the front right sub. So now we're gonna move on to the third sub. Okay, so there we go. And on this one, we reached about minus 4.6. So now we can start time aligning these subwoofers. So in order to do that, first, let's go back over into the miniDSP. I'm gonna mute the right and back subs. And I wanna do a measurement of just the left, and then we'll do just the right. Okay, and then we want to measure the front right as well. And then what we want to do is we want to measure again, but this time we want to turn on both subs and see what we get. So basically what we want to do is start adding delay to the subwoofer that's closest to your listening position. We're going to go ahead and add a delay to the left sub. And to do that, we're just going to click on this bottom icon here. And then I'm going to go ahead and type in 2. That's what I normally like to start with. And we'll do a measurement and see what we get. We're not going to be focusing on that third sub right now. We're only worried about getting the first 2 subs playing nicely together. Then once we get those dialed in, then we'll add the third one. So this one's actually worse than the first one, just without any delay. So that's not a good one. Let's try going up to 4 and see what happens. This one looks much better than 2. I know that my final output, because I've already done this, is going to be 4.2 for my delay on this one. And if we turn the front left and right on, we want it to be above, at least above this line here, or at least matching it. So we're pretty much there. So now we can just treat this as one single subwoofer. So now basically we can do what we just did with the front left and right, except we're not going to touch those at all. Whatever is in the miniDSP, this is not changing. These 2 are not changing. We're going to turn on the third one, and when we turn that on, we want to make sure that that measurement with the third one turned on is at least here, but we want to see some improvements here, and that's called positive summation. This is our before response of just the 2 together, and then when we turn on that third one, look what happens. We started losing output right around this area, right up here, and we haven't really gained any output, which is not what we want. We're going to add 2 millisecond delay to the back sub. Okay, so even with a 2 millisecond delay, we're already starting to get that output back. So let's keep going. We know that 2 is the winner, so we'll go over and we'll go to 4. Okay, so we're starting to get a little more output. I say we keep going. I'll go ahead and input what I finally came to after doing all this tweaking here, which is 8. So I added 8 to the back sub. Okay, so here is 8 compared to this, which is just no delay on the back sub at all. It's now time to apply the EQ, and luckily for us, REW makes it really easy, especially if you have the miniDSP 2x4 HD. So I'm going to click on the EQ button in the upper pane here of REW. We'll select the miniDSP 2x4 HD. For the target settings, the target type, we're doing a subwoofer. Bass management, we don't want anything here, so just set this to a really high number. The low frequency cutoff, I just set this to 0. And then this will probably be unticked by default. We're going to tick this because I'm going to add a room curve, or AKA house curve. We're going to take the LFE rise start and set that to 100. And then the LFE rise in, we'll set it to 30. And then we'll leave these other settings at default for right now. Basically, we want this top part to be around 85 decibels. And then we want this house curve to slope it down around 75 at the crossover point, which is around 80 to, let's say, 100. So what we can do there is start to adjust this rise slope upwards, and you'll see that'll raise. But normally I try to bring this up to around 85, and we want a 10 decibel difference between this and then this. If this is around, let's just say 75 right here, and then this needs to be around 85 here, so we can probably boost it up just a little bit more, and then that's about right. Yep. There we go. So we can leave this at 75 for now, and then twirl this little box here and click on match response to target. So what I didn't mention while recording are the settings I like to use for my filter task settings. The settings here are not the default settings in REW, so you'll have to adjust them to match the ones you see here. These settings also came from one of Home Theater Guru's miniDSP videos. Now you might get something that pops up here. Just click OK, and you'll see it starts to do some things here to make it try to match this line. And you notice it didn't match it perfectly, and so what we can do is we can come here and adjust the target level. So I've already clicked match response to target. Now I just want to click on save filter coefficients to file, put this in our config folder, and just 73 dB house curve. Over to the miniDSP, we're going to click on PEQ, and we want to make sure we're on the Advanced tab, and click Import. Now find that file that you just saved, which for me is on the desktop, and we'll click Open. It's added this to the speaker, to the parametric EQ. We need to apply this EQ to every single sub. We can link two of these together. So this is the sub front left. I can select sub right, click on link, It'll ask me to say yes. When I go over to this sub, it's now linked with that one. So now let's go ahead and do a measurement and see what we get. And look at that. That's very, very similar to the actual EQ readout. So if we look at that, so it is very, very close. All right, so let's try tweaking this EQ a little bit here to get a slightly better response. So first we want to pinpoint exactly where we want to apply this EQ. We're looking at 78 dB and 64 Hertz. And we need to come down to about right here. So at 64 Hertz, so we're at 78 dB, but let's try cutting it too. So what we can do is go over to the miniDSP and we want to go to the inputs and outputs routing, hit parametric EQ. So we wanted to do 64 Hertz. Let's do -2. Let's go ahead and give this a shot at Q of 12 and -2. Okay, check that out. It corrected that little area there and got rid of that big bump. So what we can do next is go over to this 80 Hertz dip here and try to boost that up a little bit. I try to avoid boosting any more than 3 dB. So what I want to do is we're at 80 Hertz here and we need to go up to around here, which is a difference of, it's about 4. So let's try boosting it 2 and see what happens. So again, we'll go over to the miniDSP, we'll hit EQ2. We'll put in our frequency that we need. I wanted to boost it 2. And let's try that same Q factor of 12 that we did earlier. Okay, so as you can see here, kind of got rid of that bump by boosting it a couple decibels. This is a great house curve we got set up. Now you'll also notice that, we're a little bit off here. So we want this to be around 85 decibels and then we want this to be around 75. So we're about a decibel off. So what we can do is go back to the miniDSP into the inputs and routing and we'll add a decibel here. Now that we've added that +1 there, we have around 85 decibels here and then around 75 here, which is exactly what we wanted out of our house curve. Now, something I do want to add real quick is after we were done setting everything up, level matching, time aligning, and then doing the EQ, and you got it all tweaked and exactly where you want it, you're going to want to rerun room correction if you use it. So you're going to want to rerun Audyssey or YPAO or Dirac Live. Most of these room correction software things will EQ that house curve out that you spent so much time tweaking and getting exactly where you want it. And if you don't want that, there's a couple of options. I know that certain versions of Dirac Live allow you to disable subwoofer correction. Now for Audyssey, there is a way to do that and disable the room correction, but you need 2 things. One, you need a receiver that is compatible with the Audyssey multi-EQ editor app that you can buy on the App Store or through like Google Play or something. And I believe that's $20. But basically that allows you to disable room correction on the subwoofer after the fact, so you can retain that house curve. And I'll include a little clip of me doing that on the iPad right now, just so you see what it looks like. So initially, Audyssey is going to create a default measurement room correction file. I typically label that Audyssey default do not edit. That way I can make a copy of that and do whatever adjustments I need to. And we'll go in and edit it. I'm going to go into multi-EQ filter frequency range, and up here you'll see fronts, center, all that stuff. We want to select the subwoofer, and then we just want to take this line here and drag it all the way over. We'll hit done. You've now disabled the room correction on the subwoofer, but we're not quite done yet. We need to upload that to the receiver. So you're going to select the little upload icon in the upper left, send to AV receiver, and then once your receiver is found, you'll go ahead and select it there, and then it's going to ask you if you want to send it to your receiver. Hit send, it'll do its thing, and then you're good to go. Now we're at this final step, which is aligning our subwoofers so they're playing nicely with our mains and getting us the best crossover. All right, so first and foremost, what we need to do in order to start this whole process is unhook our main left and right speakers in our system. So as you can see here, this is after room correction. My Audyssey stuff is turned on. If I back out my speakers and my manual setup on my crossovers, you'll see they're all at 80 minus my top middle, which are 110. That's because that's the lowest they can go, and I honestly can't do anything with REW with those. So in order to take a measurement properly, what we want to do is I'm going to go ahead and label this subs 60, and then for our output, we want this to be on the L plus R. As you can see, this is just our subwoofers. So what I can go ahead and do is go back into my receiver, go under crossovers again, and raise that to 80. And then now we'll do another measurement. Okay, and as you can see, our little line here, it went up because our crossover is going up. So again, I'm gonna go through each and every one of these up until 120. We're back in REW here, and yeah, I know this looks like spaghetti right now, but as you see on the left side, I have 60 hertz all the way through 120. So 60, 80, 90, 100, 110, and 120. So now basically what we wanna do is we need to plug our mains back in and do a similar thing with those, but we're gonna actually mute the subwoofers. So I've hooked my mains back up. I've made sure that my volume is what it was before, which is very important. Since you just went through all the crossovers, make sure that your crossovers are back at the beginning. And then what we need to do now is mute the subwoofers. So in order to do that easily, we're just gonna come over to the miniDSP, and we'll just mute the input 1. And then I'm gonna click on measure, and I will label this one L plus R 60. Remember, this is the left front speaker and the right front speaker crossover at 60. So the red line is a subwoofer, and then this brown line will pick up there and continue on here. But basically, I'm gonna do the same thing I did before. I'm gonna do the rest of the measurements off screen, going up to 120 hertz for the crossover. So as you can see, I went through all of them here from 60 all the way up to 120. So now we're actually ready to start using REW's alignment tool to kind of figure out, you know, which one is the best. And it's actually really simple. So essentially, I will select the Subs 60 and Subs LR. You got to be under the All SPL tab. This won't work if you're in SPL and phase. So to access the alignment tool, go ahead and hit the control button here and then click on alignment tool. And then once we're in here, what we want to do is we want to make sure that Sub 60 is selected on the top or bottom, doesn't really matter. And then the other one is going to be our left plus right 60. And if you don't see this stuff down here, you want to make sure that show phase traces is turned on. Now what we need to do is we need to take our cursor and put it at our crossover point. It doesn't need to be exact. At that point, just click on align phase slopes at cursor. And then you'll notice it gives you a delay. Now this says minus 36.50, so it's a little far away. My eyes are bad. This is saying we need to apply a delay to our mains of minus 36.50. Well, obviously we can't do that, but what we can do is take this negative number, and essentially it would end up being a positive number if we were to apply it to the sub. So instead of minus 36.5, it would be 36.5. So here's what I recommend doing. Instead of putting this in and then taking a measurement, I end up saving them on a notepad. So you see I have notepad saved right here, and I have 60, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, all right here. So I'm just gonna take this number, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and paste it here. I'm just hit Control V. There it is, 36.50. And what I also like to do is I also like to click on Align Sum. And basically what that's gonna do is that's gonna create a predicted outcome of what these settings will do. So I'm gonna click on Subs 80, and then we're gonna uncheck the L plus R 60 and check the L plus R 80. And then up here, you can go ahead and change the Sub 60 to Sub 80, and then the L plus R 60 to L plus R 80. Move our cursor to 80, which is our crossover point here. Do the same thing. Click on Align Phase Slopes at Cursor. Again, it's gonna give you that delay. So we're gonna take that delay again, Control C to copy. We're gonna go back over to our notepad and just put that in. Again, we're not worried about the negative aspect of this part. So now that we have all these predicted ones saved, and remember, you should have went through and saved all of these as well. Now we're ready to input those into the miniDSP. So what we want to do here is, if we bring up the miniDSP, you'll notice I also have a calculator pulled up. So first of all, in the miniDSP, we want to make sure we unmute this because we don't want to mute these at all. And then under outputs, we want to take this number here and apply it to all of our subwoofers. And if we already have a millisecond delay in there, we want to add this number on top of what's already in there. So for instance, 4.2, we'd want to add 4.2 and 36.5 together. So we'd get 40.7. So basically we'll put in 40.7 here. And then since I already copied that number from the notepad over here, I can just Control V and paste it right in there. And then here, which is 36.5 plus 8, so that is 44.5. And then now something very important, we want to make sure that we go in to our receiver, want to change that crossover back to whatever delay is associated with that crossover. So I changed it to 60 because for 60, I applied a 36.5 millisecond delay to all subwoofers. But now we're ready to start taking a measurement and comparing these. as you can see now, if we compare this crossover 60 with the predicted one, obviously it's going to be a little different. 60, I wouldn't want to use that. Obviously, it's just the response is no good. I'll go back into my receiver, change the crossover to 80. We'll go back to the miniDSP and back into our notepad, and we're going to change these again. So now we're going to take the 80 number that's associated with the 80 hertz crossover, since we changed it to that, and we're going to input the 34.06 in here. And there we go. Now we are ready to take another measurement here. So again, here is the predicted, and here is our actual outcome. So you can see it's a bit different. We got a bit more of a dip here, a little null here. All right, so I've ran through all of these measurements from 60 to 120. So we'll unclick crossover 60, that's no good. So crossover 80, looking good. Let's go ahead and move on to 100. And then now we're really starting to see some really good positive changes. So if we keep going, you actually should see it get slightly better. I'd probably stick with 110 if I'm being completely honest, although 100 doesn't look too bad either. But for my speakers in my room, I think the crossover 100 is the one that I'm gonna settle on. So what I'm basically gonna do, because I've already done the 120, is I'm gonna go into the receiver, change that to 100 for the crossover of the fronts, and then I'm gonna go back into the miniDSP, reference my notepad again, and we'll find 100, take that number, put that number in first. Remember, I added 4.2 to this one because that was already there, and then this one had 8, so that would be 21.8. So now that is our crossover point for our speakers. But what I would recommend doing is going in and measuring the left and right speaker separately, just to make sure that nothing's weird or wonky, or you don't have any massive nulls. Now we're ready to move on to the final step, and that is making sure the crossovers on our center and surround speakers are where they should be as well. And now for this, you are gonna need a program called ASIO for All. It's a free program. I'll link to it in the description, but basically you're gonna wanna install that. And what we need to do is go ahead and go to Preferences in REW. Under Drivers, select ASIO, and then we're gonna choose this ASIO for All V2. And initially you might have to go down here into your little tray icon, click on ASIO for All, and then make sure that whatever your HDMI output is called, on mine it's Intel Display Audio, make sure that is turned on and that the U-mic is also turned on. When you switch over, you want to go over to Cal Files and make sure under ASIO for All V2 that your U-mic calibration file is input into there. If it's not, you go ahead and browse and find it. Mine's already input in here. So click on Measure, and then we're just gonna label this center and whatever your crossover on your receiver is. So on mine, if I look at mine real quick, my crossover on my center is set to 80. So I'm just gonna say center 80. And then for the center one, it's gonna be output 3 on mine. Basically, we're gonna go through like we did before, and I'm just gonna do a measurement of 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, just to see which one gives us the flattest frequency response. All right, so I went through and measured all of them. I'll start unclicking them here. We'll just compare them real quick, pick the one that gives us the best frequency response. So obviously 80 right off the bat, not that great. Click on 90, and highlighted here, it's already looking a bit better. We'll uncheck 80, and then we'll go ahead and check out what 100 looks like, and I'd say it looks a bit better. So 100 is kind of where it's at right now. Let's check on 110, and that one looks pretty good too. What about 120? And honestly, 120 and 110 kind of look the same. 120 seems to have this kind of bigger null here. So I'm gonna stick with 110. So basically I just go back into the receiver, select 110 as my crossover for my center, and that's good to go there. And now basically I'm gonna move on and do the same thing for the surround speakers. So basically I'm just gonna repeat the whole process I just did with the center channel. I'll click on Measure. I'll label this RS 80 because that's where it's at right now, and then I'll select 6. So 5 would be the left surround, 6 is the right surround. And as we could see, we got kind of a crappy response here. So I'm just gonna keep going just like I did before. I'll do it off camera, I'll come back, we'll kind of look at them and pick the best one. All right, so I just did all those measurements on the right surround speakers. So again, we'll start with 80 and compare it to all the other ones. So right off the bat, 80's got this null here that I don't really like. So if I go ahead and check out 90, 90's already starting to look a little bit better here, but we're seeing this null down here. I don't really like that. So maybe move up to 100 and see what that looks like. You know what? We're actually looking better at 100 than 80. So let's check out 110, and you know, 110's looking pretty good. I'd probably actually select between 1 or 110 right now. I'm gonna go with 110, just go with my gut. And then we'll check out 120, and with 120, this null up here, as you can see, with 110 it was only here. What was it with 100? It was about the same actually. So 110 seems to be our winner. I'm gonna go ahead and go into the receiver and change that. Sorry, my other camera died, so I wasn't able to record it, but I'm basically, like I said, changing the crossover from 120 to 110. So I've settled on 110 for the right surround, and what I would go ahead and do is, if I wasn't recording this, again, because I have all this equipment here next to me, is I would go ahead and do a measurement on the left surround speaker as well, just to make sure nothing funky is going on. And because I only have a 5.3.2 setup, I guess, I only have the 5 bed channels. So if you have speakers behind you, like if you're rocking the 7.1, then you want to use REW and select the proper channels and select the right crossovers for those as well. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this quick reference guide and that your system is sounding better than ever. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.